Hey everyone, the manual transmission in my BMW E46 M3 has been weeping oil, so I'm going to address that in this video. Specifically, we're going to be replacing two seals, 7 and 8 on the diagram here. We're also going to be changing the oil in the transmission as well as installing transmission mounts. So if you have a leaky or sweating transmission, this video could prove to be very interesting for you, especially for this rear seal here, number 8. Okay guys, in this video we're going to be replacing the transmission mounts to solid to go along with the solid mounts, engine mounts that I just put on and you can see that in the rod bearing replacement video. And we're also going to be replacing the main seal, or not the main seal, but the seal in the back of the transmission. So this one here ought to be interesting, so check it out. Seal number 8 here in the diagram is interesting because if you take a look at the description, for this repair there is no repair instruction or special tool. The repair should only be made by qualified personnel, at best by BMW partner organization. BMW does not assume liability or damages caused through improper repair. This is an interesting repair, and we'll go through how we actually had to fabricate a special tool to complete this job. And the big issue is that you've got this nut here on the back, number 3, that has to be removed safely. So we'll go through in the video how we actually do that. Note that you don't have to necessarily replace the rear seal 8. The leak for you could actually be coming from number 7, which is where the shift rod connects into the transmission. So that could be all that's required for you. Perhaps number 8 is not an issue. For me, it's hard to say if it actually was or not. The seal certainly was dried up and shot, basically. So we replaced it anyway. Okay, first step is we're going to drop the exhaust section. And you can see in my case, I upgraded the hardware to stainless steel. So we'll go ahead and get that out of the way. You're going to want to mark your drive shaft before moving it because it is balanced. So you can hear see here we're taking the drive shaft off of the transmission. Then we lower it and just hang it essentially from wire, and this is pointing towards the rear. And then you can see at the top there's the nut, the big nut you have to take off, as well as the connecting rod at the very top. Go ahead and drain the transmission fluid, first by removing the top bolt and then the bottom bolt. We have to fabricate a special tool to essentially hold the drive shaft in place while we're cranking on it, so loosening it as well as torquing it down. And so you can see in the picture, we're basically using the threaded portion of the flange essentially, and then creating a tool that will bolt into it that we can hold on to. So essentially hold it steady while we're torquing. With this tool in place, you can see that we're able to get enough leverage on the nut and break the nut and then essentially take it off. So that's step 1. We did some further modification on this special tool as well later on in the procedure.
No. Okay, matey, you gotta hold that up so I can, that's it, hold it up like that. Hold like that so I can see what the hell I'm doing.
With the nut removed, we're able to pull the output flange off The output flange is part number 1 in the previous diagram. Here you can see the difference between the stock transmission mount and the aluminum. Aluminum is about 1 millimeter shorter. The engine mount is about 5 millimeters shorter. And so this should prove interesting in terms of reducing flex. With the transmission braced from the floor, in addition to being bolted on the engine mounts, we were able to easily replace out the OE with the upgraded solid aluminum. At the top of the image, you can see the shift rod, which was released by moving back a connecting pin, a clip and a pin. That exposes seal number 7. Seal number 8 from the diagram is underneath the paper towel. Apologies for the inconvenience here. We essentially replaced out both of those seals with the fresh seal and started reassembly. We start by hand assembling the output flange back onto the transmission, as well as the new nut that came with the seal package. And then we begin torquing. You can see that there's an additional piece added onto our special tool there to give it additional reinforcement. There is a torquing procedure where first you have to essentially torque down the flange in a pre-tension, then back it off, and then torque it back on. This settles everything in place.
We go to 89. So the 140, what's the purpose of the 140?
To preset the bearing.
Preset the bearing, and then we torque it down to 89.
And the shims, just make sure everything's smooth.
There we go, and now we're at 89. Using special tool 333.
So both seals are now installed, and we can reassemble the drive shaft and put everything back up. We also put in OE transmission fluid. It did have aftermarket fluid in it that smelled quite burnt, so I'm hoping that just going back to a standard OE fluid and to establish a baseline, and then I'll go from there. I wasn't really quite happy with the fluid that was in there. Perhaps it was just because it was burnt. This idea that they have lifetime oil is just bogus. So go ahead and replace that. Those fluids, as the more frequent, the better. From this video, you can tell that the hardest part of this job is actually fabricating the tool that you need to do this safely and effectively without any damage. And so having a welder is in a metal shop is important, and like they do at NoBrainR, they also have 2 benders, so you can do other interesting projects. And so you can see here we're making a sim rig. That's the subject of another video. But thank you for watching. We hope you enjoyed this and you have some insight on what it takes to replace rear seal number 8. And like I say, number 7 you can probably pop out much easier. And that's probably the source of your leak anyway.